Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. So, thank you all for coming. Nice to see you today. Previously, I gave one lecture, which I posted on my YouTube channel on this subject of Vaishnava initiation. And this will be the second lecture. So I'm not going to repeat, well, let's say I won't repeat a lot of that. I may overlap some. There's so much content here, it's hard to do it all in linear progression. It won't be like that. But if you haven't seen that other video, I encourage you to go have a look at it. So this one is progressing. The last time we discussed just the bigger picture about initiation, specifically in ISKCON, what it means, how devotees, how we come to Krishna consciousness, and how we understand the initiation and the process. And I made the point that all of our activity in Krishna consciousness is giving us the opportunity to achieve the highest conceivable position of eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord directly. And Srila Prabhupada encouraged us and told us many times that this can be achieved in one lifetime if we will apply ourselves. So then I discussed qualifications of the disciple, the qualifications of the spiritual master, what the Hari Bhakti Vilas, the first Vilas, gives instruction for how guru and disciple should test each other. Nectar of Devotion, the how to execute devotional service, and Rupa Goswami's instructions there, beginning with accepting a bona fide spiritual master. And I believe at the end we were then talking about what is a bona fide spiritual master and how one can ascertain a bona fide spiritual master. So today we're going to be picking up from there for the most part. And I'm going to talk today about initiation in ISKCON. And again, we won't get through this whole thing. I'm limited by time today. I have only an hour. So, and that will include questions. So we'll get so far. I think this entire series will require probably 4 lectures before we cover all the important aspects of it. Okay, so with that introduction, initiation in Krishna consciousness in ISKCON particularly, and you all probably know the history of the early days. Hopefully you've read some of the memoirs of my godbrothers and godsisters about the early days with Srila Prabhupada and how they were all one family, and how Prabhupada introduced initiation with those early students in a somewhat surprising manner, explaining practically before they even knew what they were getting into. But Prabhupada was eager to get his mission established, and so he gave them initiation to the ones who were serious students at that time. And of course, that's always been the case. So in the early days, of course, Srila Prabhupada would initiate everyone personally, chant on their beads, and so on. But as ISKCON grew, became very difficult for Prabhupada to chant on all the beads and sending them back and forth through the mail because he had started to travel also. And so he began to assign his some of his leaders, some of his responsible men, the GBC or sannyasis, to do the duty of chanting on the beads and picking out the names of the initiates. The way it worked at that time, as ISKCON grew, the temple presidents would, of course, understand or see who is serious about the practice of Krishna consciousness. And so the presidents then would recommend those students to Srila Prabhupada for initiation. And so Srila Prabhupada would have generally whoever was close to them chant on beads and pick out their names. And they did that by letter. So, for example, I took initiation early in 1974, and my beads were chanted on by Rupanuga Prabhu. And we received initiation letter in the mail where Prabhupada gave us our names. There was 4 of us at that initiation ceremony. He gave us the names, and then the temple president did the fire sacrifice, completing the initiation. So that continued practically all the way through the end until Prabhupada's health began to become seriously compromised. And so the senior men, they started withholding a lot of mail from Prabhupada. They didn't want to burden him because they were thinking that the spiritual master, he accepts the sinful reactions of the disciples. Therefore, since Prabhupada was in such a weak condition, they did not, let's say, they wanted to try to protect Prabhupada. Well, of course, this was their own doing. They didn't ask Prabhupada about that. They simply took it upon themselves to make that decision. So these letters were piling up. Then there's two conversations and 1 letter. That was the May 28th conversation, the July 7th conversation, and then the July 9th letter. So in the May 28th conversation, which everybody should read, on the database, look at that letter, or that conversation rather, and it's a conversation where there was about 5 senior men. They went to Srila Prabhupada with specific questions that they wanted to ask. And so I'm going to read some of this. Now, this is a significant conversation in terms of those who accept Ritvik Vada, and also in terms of how, let's say, what happened in ISKCON later after Srila Prabhupada's departure. So Satsarup is deputed to be the speaker of this, and he said to Prabhupada, they were asking several questions, and Satsarup says, then our next question concerns initiations in the future, particularly at that time when you were no longer with us. We want to know how first and second initiation would be conducted. Now, pause, I'm going to make my own comment here. I was rather shocked by this when I first heard about this personally, because I thought, well, it's very clear. Prabhupada has given the siddhanta in his books that when the spiritual master departs, or rather, let's say, before the spiritual master departs, the disciples do not accept disciples of their own, but rather they bring those initiates to their spiritual master. After the spiritual master departs, then the qualified disciples then carry on the parampara, the spiritual tradition, by accepting their own disciples. And so in this way, one after the other, the disciplic succession goes on. So I was rather shocked when I heard that, why are they asking this question? It's plainly obvious. Why is the need for this question? But we'll see that, let's say that, okay, I'll speak frankly. There's a lot of indication, well, not a lot of indication, there's personal testimony to the fact that as early as April of that year, 1977, Tamal Krishna and others, they were plotting about how to continue to carry on to take over the movement after Srila Prabhupada's departure. And to the point where they told some God brothers, don't leave, because they were all in Vrindavan. Don't leave. We're going to divide up the world. So they had their schemes in place. So maybe they were, let's say, it's possible that they came to Prabhupada with these questions, specifically to get him to give the answer that they were looking for. In other words, as they say in law, in a courtroom, leading questions. And there were allegations that this May 28th conversation was doctored with, was tempered with to change the statements around and so on. However, I believe somebody did do a forensic analysis of that tape and found that no, there was no indication of foul play there. Okay, end of comment. Continuing. Prabhupada, yes, I shall recommend some of you. After this is settled up, I shall recommend some of you to act as officiating acharyas. Tamal Krishna replies, is that called Ritvik Acharya? Prabhupada, Ritvik, yes. Now, this appears to be contradictory because the officiating acharya is an acharya who's officiating on behalf of somebody else. So perhaps Prabhupada did not hear that one phrase, particularly at the time when you were no longer with us, because in speaking about officiating acharyas, this refers to a time when he is still with us. So this appears to confuse Satsvarup Maharaj. He says, he asked, then what is the relationship of that person who gives the initiation? And so he's trying to get clarification. Whose disciple is this going to be? What is the relationship of that person who gives the initiation? And Prabhupada says, he's guru, Satsvarup, but he does it on your behalf. Prabhupada's reply, yes, that is formality, because in my presence one should not become guru. Now that statement of Srila Prabhupada's indicates also that he's not referring to a time when he is no longer with us. Because in my presence, one should not become guru. So I'm referring to this conversation because it's significant in how many devotees understand initiation, particularly for Ritvik Vada, and so on. Okay, continuing. Because of my presence, one should not become guru. So on my behalf, on my order, Amara Agya Guru, Aya, This is referring to Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 7:128. The verse is instruct everyone to follow the orders of the Lord, of Lord Sri Krishna as they are given in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. In this way, become a spiritual master and try to liberate everyone in this land. Prabhupada, be actual guru, but on my order, Satsvarup, so they may be considered your disciples. So again, he's trying to get clarification. Your disciples. Prabhupada replied, again, indicates a little confusion. Yes, they are disciples. Why consider who? And so Tamal Krishna, understanding the confusion, he interrupts. He says, no, he's asking about these Ritvik Acharyas. They're officiating giving Diksha. The people who they are giving Diksha to, whose disciples are they? And Prabhupada's reply is, they're his disciple. Tamal Krishna, they're his disciple. Prabhupada, who is initiating? He is grand disciple. So again, here, this answer is confused. Prabhupada is saying, now that they are the disciples of his disciple, or whose grand disciple? Srila Prabhupada's grand disciple. So on one hand, they're saying Ritvik Guru, they're being initiated on behalf of Srila Prabhupada. But then Prabhupada says, no, he's a guru, and the initiate is a grand disciple. Then Satsvarup says, yes, Tamal Krishna, that's clear. Now, Guru Kripa, he was a very straightforward, he didn't pull any punches. He said what was on his mind, and in a very bold way. He wasn't trying to make anything politically correct or anything like that. So he says here, and I'm going to read this, and unfortunately, I don't have a reference for this, but you might be able to find it online if you search for some keywords, because this is copied and pasted many, many times. Guru Kripa. In the beginning, Srila Prabhupada did the Diksha, the Yagya, and the name giving. As the numbers increased, he authorized the GBC and senior sannyasis to pick names and chant on the beads, etc. In 1977, during the months May, June, July, I was in Vrindavan with Srila Prabhupada, giving him massage in his bed between 1 a.m. and Mangalarti. During the day, many letters would come. Satsvarup Goswami was the secretary, and we decided that only letters that would give joy to Prabhupada would be read, like the numbers of books sold, etc. A maximum of 5 letters daily were read to Srila Prabhupada. Some of them, and after some weeks like this, there were stacks and stacks of letters, all relating to initiation. Hundreds of people were panicking that Srila Prabhupada would leave the planet before they were given initiation. So at that time, the situation was brought before Srila Prabhupada in his room by Satsvarup, Tamal, myself, and maybe some others. Up until this time, it was a very simple matter that we were doing the initiations, but first we had to ask permission. Srila Prabhupada never refused any recommendations from his senior men. And personally, I would sometimes argue with the GBC that they were giving initiation too easily. At this meeting, Srila Prabhupada basically said, from here on, if you feel they are ready, then you may give initiation on my behalf. Okay, that's the July 7th meeting, July 7th conversation, which we'll get to in a minute. I understood this for what it was, simply extending the authority a little further than it had been. Tamal Krishna Goswami began to say, but who will do it? Which devotees will do this? And Srila Prabhupada said, whoever is nearest, they will do it. Whoever is closest. And so Tamal began suggesting some names, and Prabhupada made the list from which the July 9th letter is created. So someone asked Guru Kripa a question. Why were you not on the list of 11? the answer. He says, because it did not matter. Srila Prabhupada said, whoever was closest. I was already doing this, and Srila Prabhupada never told me or anyone else not on the list to stop. So for myself, it was not very relevant. Tamal Krishna then made a list of names himself, and Srila Prabhupada signed the letter. But they were only priests to act on behalf of Srila Prabhupada. Tamal asked about Bhavananda, who was not a temple president or GBC at that time, and everyone knew well of his homosexual tendencies. And Tamal pushed his name because he was already planning on how to take over when Srila Prabhupada was gone. So that's Guru Kripa's and testimony, and what he's referring to is the July 7th conversation. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll read some highlights from this. So Tamal Krishna is asking Prabhupada, we're receiving a number of letters now, and these people who want to get initiated. So up till now, since you're becoming ill, we have asked them to wait. Prabhupada replied, the local men, senior sannyasis, can do that. Tamal Krishna says, that's what we were doing. I mean, formally we were. The local GBC sannyasis were chanting on the beads, and they were writing to your divine grace, and you were giving a spiritual name. So that process should be resumed, or should we change it? I think one thing is, it said that the spiritual master takes on the karma. You know, he has to cleanse the disciples. So we don't want that you should have to bear that burden. Your health is not so good. So that's why we've been asking everybody to wait. I just want to know if we should continue to wait some more time. Prabhupada replied, no, the senior sannyasis, Tamal Krishna. Now, Prabhupada did not always finish his sentences. So when you read the transcript of this, there's ellipses or 3 dots indicating that Prabhupada did not continue, or else he was interrupted. Tamal Krishna, so they should continue to. Prabhupada, you can give me a list of sannyasis, and I will mark who. Okay, Tamal says. So Prabhupada then suggests some names, and then Tamal Krishna adds some more names. Then Prabhupada, 5 or 6 men, you divide, whoever is nearest. Tamal Krishna, whoever is nearest. So that person wouldn't have to write to your divine grace. They could write directly to that person. Prabhupada, is like yes, an affirmation. Tamal Krishna, actually they are already initiating the person. Actually, they are initiating the person on your divine grace's behalf. Those persons who are initiated are still your, he meant finished disciples. Prabhupada said, second initiation we shall think over. Tamal Krishna. Okay. So then Prabhupada later, just 2 or 3 sentences later, he says, they can also do second initiation. Apparently he changed his mind. So Tamal Krishna says, these men, they can do second initiation, so there's no need for devotees to write to you for first and second initiation. They can write to the man nearest to them. But all these persons are still your disciples. Anybody who gives initiation, they are doing so on your behalf. Srila Prabhupada, yes. Tamal Krishna, you know that book I'm maintaining of your disciples' names? Should I continue that? Prabhupada, yes. So if someone gives initiation, like Harikesh Maharaj, you should send that person's name to us here, and I'll enter it into the book. And Prabhupada says, yes, and in India, I am here. So we shall, so Prabhupada was picking out men in different parts of the world. Kridananda for South America, Bhagavan for Europe, and so on like this. And Prabhupada says, in India, I am here. So they could, meaning they could write to him. So not the everybody, but those who are close. And also in India, Jayapataka. Prabhupada, so without waiting for me, whatever you consider it is right, this will depend on your discretion. So that's that conversation. It was on the basis of this conversation that the all-important July 9th letter is written. And all of you, everybody, should read this July 9th letter because it is extremely important. It was used by both the GBC, or let's say the 11 zonal acharyas, to take over the movement. And it's also used by those of Ritvik Vada to indicate that initiations were to be by Srila Prabhupada henceforward. So this letter, just a few days later, 2 days later, after the July 7th conversation, Tamal Krishna, he was took responsibility to write this letter. And he writes, Dear Maharajas and Prabhus, this went out to all GBC and temple presidents. Recently, when all of us GBC members were with His Divine Grace and Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada indicated that soon he would appoint some of his senior disciples to act as Ritvik representatives of the Acharya for the purpose of performing initiations, both first and second initiation. His Divine Grace has so far given a list of 11 disciples who will act in that capacity, and he lists their names. In the past, temple presidents have written to Srila Prabhupada recommending a particular devotee's initiation. Now that Srila Prabhupada has named these representatives, temple presidents may henceforward send recommendation for first and second initiation to whichever of these 11 representatives are nearest to their temple. After considering the recommendation, these representatives may accept the devotee as an initiated disciple of Srila Prabhupada by giving a spiritual name, or in the case of second initiation, chanting on the Gayatri thread, just as Srila Prabhupada has done. The newly initiated disciples, the newly initiated devotees are disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and their names should be sent to or enter in the disciples book. Okay, and that's signed by Tamal Krishna Goswami, secretary to Srila Prabhupada, and signed by Srila Prabhupada. So this is extremely important history because, again, these documents are used as a basis of what has transpired in terms of initiation into the future. And so everybody should be familiar with these. I've included these letters in their entirety in my Divine or Demoniac book. Again, for giving access to everyone to read them because they are so very important. So let's see. It's 2:13, and we haven't gotten very far besides giving some of the history. Okay, I'll just say a little bit more about this, and then we'll take some questions. So after Srila Prabhupada passed away, there was no discussion about initiations and so on. Although apparently behind the scenes, there was a lot of discussion about that. So nothing was said until the annual general meeting, AGM as they call it, in Mayapur the next year, in which the 11 persons who were named on that July 9th letter took it upon themselves to name themselves as the successor acharyas of ISKCON. That is, and not only the successor acharyas, but the only disciples who would be permitted to give initiations in ISKCON at that time. And there was no time limit stated to that. So basically it was a coup d'etat, you could say it like that, that they took over Srila Prabhupada's mission. Although there's nothing in that July 9th letter to say that they were named as Prabhupada's successors, there's nothing in that July 9th letter to say that they were named as, that they were names were put forward to begin initiating disciples chosen by Srila Prabhupada, although that is the way it was presented to the devotees. So with that decision came a lot of, a great deal of angst amongst the God brothers and God sisters, wondering, how this happened, because nobody knew that Srila Prabhupada had made such a declaration. Now, of course, remember, these days there was no email, there was no no electronic communication whatsoever. Everything was communicated either by telephone call or by letters that were copied and distributed by hand. So there's one other letter in this regard that everybody should become acquainted with, and that is the letter by Pradyumna to Satsvarup Maharaj. And this letter, it's Thursday, 5 March 1978. So this is just after the GBC meeting. So I'll read selected parts of this. Dear Satsvarup Maharaj, please accept my most humble obeisances. I'm writing this letter with great anxiety in my heart after days and days and long nights of thought and careful consideration. I've been staying in Vrindavan for some time, and we have not visited any other center recently except Delhi. Therefore, my information I have about what is happening in our other centers comes only from devotees visiting here and occasional letters or newsletters. But the news that I hear from these sources is very alarming, and therefore I'm writing to you in anxiety. This matter concerns the God brothers who were selected by Srila Prabhupada to accept disciples. At the time of Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, it was most clearly understood by all of us present that Srila Prabhupada made no successor, all in caps, made no successor. Everyone admitted the fact and understood it clearly. Instead, the GBC was to jointly manage all of the affairs of ISKCON, as had been the case previously. This is the same solution as desired by Srila Siddhanta, who had not named any successor, although his wishes were not followed. In addition to the GBC management, Srila Prabhupada selected 7 somewhat advanced disciples to grant initiation to newcomers. Now, that's another misunderstanding also. That was somehow or other communicated, because that's the word that was going out. So apparently he heard it like that. Now, Prabhupada, in the late 1977, there were some Indian gentlemen that came to see Srila Prabhupada and telling him that they wanted to be the successors, that they wanted to take charge of his mission after his departure. And so they asked Prabhupada, who is your successor? And Prabhupada said, all of them, everyone, whoever is following, they're my successor. You can also be successor if you will follow. So Prabhupada made it very clear in that conversation that he did not name any specific individual or individuals, but he said everyone who is following. Okay, so back to Pradyumna's letter. Here he's, so one more sentence first. However, it was never mentioned at any time by his divine grace that these 11 were to be known as acharyas. He simply instructed that they may now accept disciples. And he didn't do that. So he wants to make the point here. He says, first of all, the word acharya can be taken in three senses. The etymology of the word means one who practices, or one who practices what he preaches. This is the general meaning and may be used in relationship to any pure devotee, period. Secondly, the word also means one who grants initiation to his disciples, and this specifically indicating one who is a guru. And anyone who grants initiation or is a guru may be called Acharya Dev, etc., by his disciples only. Whoever has accepted him as guru must give all respects to him in every way, but this does not apply to those who are not his disciples. Thirdly, the word Acharya indicates the spiritual head of an institution or pita. This meaning is very specific. It does not mean just anyone. It means only one who has been specifically declared by the previous Acharya to be his successor above all others to the seat of the spiritual institution which he heads. He alone, among all God brothers, is given a raised seat and special honor. No other God brother may receive such respect, and he is the authority in all spiritual and material matters. This is the strict tradition of all Gaudiya Sampradayas. So here we have a lot of information, evidence, and I wish I had time to comment on these further, and I will in the next lecture. But again, I'm sorry because I'm pressed on time. We should stop and take any questions or discussion. I guess it's all very straightforward. There's nothing really, I wasn't able to give much opinion in all of this because this background is very necessary. After the Mayapur meeting in 1978, the 11 declared themselves to be acharyas and the only gurus in ISKCON. They were, and moreover, they said that they were appointed to this position by Srila Prabhupada. Now that letter, the July 9th letter, went out to all of the temple presidents and the GBC, who could understand very clearly from that letter that Srila Prabhupada did not appoint anybody as acharyas. He did not appoint them as the sole successors of ISKCON, or not even indicate that they should take disciples. But that's the way it came down, and most of them, I don't remember exactly, I didn't check, but most of those were also GBC. So at the GBC meeting, if they took a vote on whether we're going to accept that or not, of course, they carried the result. And so that's the way it was declared and promulgated throughout the society. This news was received with great dismay by all the God brothers and God sisters. At the same time, the junior devotees who were waiting for initiation. Now remember, this is in the very heyday of ISKCON. ISKCON was a booming society at that time. Devotees were joining all the time. We were feeling very confident. We had the impression that our movement was just going to continue with this same momentum forever and ever until the whole world was flooded with Krishna consciousness. And would have been wonderful to see that. But in any case, there is many junior devotees, people that were coming to Krishna consciousness, who then became would become the disciples of the 11 gurus. And what happened was they had the political power. The gurus and their new disciples or aspiring disciples had the political weight, and the God brothers were pushed out. particularly those who might have objected in any way to what was going on. In fact, Pradyumna, who was Prabhupada had wanted him to finish the Srimad Bhagavatam, Pradyumna, because of this letter, he himself was pushed out, as were many, many, many devotees, and sometimes even physically. So this became the first major, the first disaster, major disaster was Srila Prabhupada's departure. The next one, coming in close succession, was this takeover of ISKCON by these 11 so-called acharyas. Now, that continued for some time, despite the objections of the senior men. But finally, by the, not long after that, okay, so this is 1978, not long after that, several years at the most, senior devotees started falling down. The sannyasis and the gurus began falling into illicit sex life and falling down from their position in very blatant ways. They were not chanting their rounds and so on and so on. And so the God Brothers, who were the second line of management at that time, they were the temple presidents, and I don't think we had regional secretaries at that time. They were all the temple presidents. So the temple presidents and sannyasis, they formed what was called a 50-man committee. In other words, one by one, God Brothers could be pushed out, but they joined together as a group of 50 senior devotees to challenge the GBC on this zonal acharya. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention. So what happened? The 11, they in May 1978, they also created what was called the zonal acharyas. So in the letter, Prabhupada said, whoever is closest. So they divided up the world according to various zones. And each one of these 11 was the initiating spiritual master in that zone. And it didn't matter if the potential initiate didn't care for that person, didn't want him as a spiritual master. That was the only one that they could accept as their guru, many times against their will. So these kinds of things were going on. The whole zonal acharya became very distasteful, very problematic. And so the 50-man committee then challenged the GBC executive committee. We're going to put an end to this. This is not going to continue. This is not Vaishnava siddhanta. This is incorrect, and we're going to put a stop to it. May 1985. I'm not sure of the month. Might have been during the summer. It was during the summer. There was a meeting held at New Vrindavan in which all the God Brothers were God Brothers or God Sisters. They were invited to come to discuss or challenge the GBC on this zonal guru idea. So I went to that meeting, and there was many devotees were speaking out, very outspoken and so on. And so the GBC, but they decided that they would deal with the situation by co-opting the opposition. This means that, okay, we'll open up the club and whoever wants to can initiate. So this will remove all of the angst. Okay, it's not just us. Anybody wants, any disciple of Srila Prabhupada who wants can then begin to initiate. And there was no restriction put on that at that time, as I recall. That's some of the history up until 1985. 85. There was another meeting, I believe, in 86, so I'm not quite sure on the dates. Maybe it was 86 that everything changed. But either way, 85 or 86. So that's the history as I understand it. Now, every God brother would have their own understanding of this history. I'm not saying that my way of understanding is the way. I'm saying this is the way that I understand it and accept it. And as far as the discussions I've had, there are many, many God brothers who are in agreement with what I have presented here today. All right. Any comments, questions? Yes, that's Danza. Dana.
Jana, thank you, Maharaj, for clearing up everything, especially about the July 9th letter and the word acharya also, because they are very prone to being used for some manipulation. I've experienced hearing a lot of different stories and explanations about those. My question is, because Srila Prabhupada said that an acharya is that successor acharya are those who follow. How should we know if somebody really follows 100%, if it's enough to leave them alone for 1 hour, to not observe them for 1 hour in a day, and they can break those principles when they are alone in that 1 hour? That's one thing that confuses me a lot, really. Should we have, is some faith needed? Uh, yeah, that's my question.
Okay. I spoke about this in detail last time, and you can find that lecture on my YouTube channel.
Oh.
But I give you the basic version. The short answer is you can't. That's why in Hari Bhakti Vilas, Sanatana Goswami, he recommends that the disciple, this prospective disciple, and the prospective guru should live together for 1 year, a minimum of 1 year, and ideally 3 years, so that each of them can get to know each other and make an evaluation to see if the other is qualified. Now, in a modern day, how do you test? Well, you can listen to their lectures. What are they saying? Oh, first thing is become educated in what you are getting into. Okay? You're taking initiation. Well, ISKCON in many ways is like it's like a club, a spiritual club. So, when the gurus come around, there's a lot of euphoria, a lot of disciples are very jubilant, and they're all having a great time, and of course they think that their guru is the best guru, and all the new people, they should take initiation from my guru because he's the best. So a lot of that goes on, a lot of canvassing on behalf of Gurudev, and to some degree, there's no doubt that happens, that people do take initiation on that basis. And I've spoken to some, and undoubtedly there's more, who later regret it because they didn't understand what they were getting into. What does it mean to accept a spiritual master? What is the qualification of a spiritual master? How do I know if they're so qualified? The disciple is at a great disadvantage in this regard. So it's, therefore, the first thing is to get some education into what you're doing, not just go with the crowd. So read. Now we have, especially for those who are English speaking, there's the database, and you can research very easily what Srila Prabhupada is saying about a qualified guru. Last week I spoke about the qualifications of the bona fide guru. And so a disciple should understand what are those qualifications, and then they should examine the different spiritual masters to see, do they fit that criteria? Now, I think there's something like 80 spiritual masters in ISKCON now. So how are you going to test? How are you going to sample from all of them? It's extremely difficult and it's challenging. So another way to do that is you ask, okay, we have the checks and balances, Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu. Okay. So you can ask Sadhu, in this case, means other advanced devotees or other senior devotees about their opinions of different gurus and their experiences. But, you know, and the third thing, the final thing that I'll say about this is to judge from your heart, not your head. Not because it's a lot of fun when Guru Dev comes around. What does your heart say? Does that person speak to you? When they speak, does it touch your heart and make you want to hear more from them? So please listen to that lecture from last week, and then we'll continue later. If you have any other questions, come back and please bring them up so that we can make them a part of this video series. Okay?
Yes, I will. I will listen to it. Thank you, Maharaj.
Something else, maybe?
From me now, no.
Oh, okay.
Thank
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so next week I'm going to speak about Ritvik Vada. And if there's time, I will also get into a personal discussion of myself and the idea of accepting disciples and my criteria. So thank you again for joining us today. And please always chant Hare Krishna attentively and read Srila Prabhupada's books every day. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,